we are in this series. We call it It's Messy, because we all know, and if you've been here before, you can help me out. You can repeat after me, because life is messy. Because life is messy. Life is messy. Life is not always easy. Life is honestly probably anything but, if you've lived long enough to experience some of the mess and the junk, because life is very often not orderly and perfect and clean and just how we thought it would be, and everything goes to plan, right? It's like so often I wrote the plan down, I took a lighter and lit it on fire in front of me, and that's more what life sometimes feels like. Has anybody lived that? Yeah, so life is messy and it can be unpredictable, but can also be incredibly beautiful. And this can be you can have the greatest life that you can imagine, but it's going to be messy. Life is going to have its time of mess. Now, we have, again, you may, if you have kids, you've probably had this happen to you too. We have some family members, just sadistic family members, who enjoy buying our kids presents that are messy. You know what I'm talking about. Oh, we love y'all. No, if you loved us, you would not buy a 15,000 piece bead set and give it to my kid. If you loved us, keep the slime at the store. You know what I'm talking about? If you loved us, you would not buy this huge Play-Doh thing that does not come out of the rug. Right? You know, parents, you feel me, right? Because here's the thing that they know. Parents ain't gonna let it happen, but kids love mess. And we got a family right here, the Landers. Anybody? Yeah, she's not bashful. Okay, so Wednesday night, the little boy was there, and he had some markers. And why use the paper when your body is a canvas? You know what I'm talking about? So I walk over and it's just like this, and I'm like, Mom, I'm sorry. It just, because kids love mess. But here's what we learn as we get older, don't we? That mess, bad, clean, good. That you don't be messy. Because why? Because honestly, because messy means I've got to clean. Messy takes more time. And mess, what we've defined through this series, that mess is anything out of the proper order that I think that it should be, and kids love mess. If there is a water puddle, you better believe they're gonna find it. If there's more food on them and around them than in them. You know what I'm talking about? But we discover that mess is bad, but not all mess is bad. There's some mess that we've learned through this series. There's some mess that we've got to learn, that we've got to walk through, that we've got to get through, that we're going to have to go through to get to things in life. And that God's going to walk with us through this mess. There's some mess that we've got to deal with and we've got to give to God. Some of us have been living in our junk and it's got to go to God. But there's some mess that we got to like both feet jump into. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. Imagine that you're renovating your house. You busted open the walls, and inside the walls there's this secret jar. You open this piece of paper. Out of the secret jar, you open it up, and it says treasure map on the top. It looks like it's like hundreds of years old, and you're just like intrigued, and you trace it down. There's a big X, and this X represents all your wildest dreams. There's treasure, and you look, and it's in your backyard. All you gotta do is go dig, but you got a problem. You just took a shower, and you got your new shoes on. Now, if you're convinced there's treasure in the dig, you don't care about the new shoes because you can go buy some more, right? Because the treasure is worth getting messy over, and that's what we want to talk about today. There's a treasure worth getting messy over. We've been looking at a scripture in Luke chapter 6. It's what we call the Sermon on the Plain. Basically, Jesus has been gathered around, a lot of people are gathered around him because, well, he does miracles, he's healing people. You'd get a crowd too, right? So he's walking down off the side of a mountain. He comes to this flat area, there's people all around. He uses it as an opportunity to teach. And we're gonna look at the last part of this today, 46 through 49. It says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, applies them, does them, lives it out, I'll show you what they're like. They're like a man building a house. He dug deep. He got messy in doing what I've called him to do, and he laid a foundation on a rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house, but it couldn't shake it because it was well built. But one who hears my words and does not put them into practice, you don't do them, you ignore them. See, it's like a man who built his house, may look the same on the outside, but he didn't have a foundation. He built it straight on the ground. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed and its destruction was complete. It was gone. It was completely destroyed. Two houses, two very different outcomes, one difference. He said one house, one life. He's exempling a life that lives out and obeys God. It actually steps in. God says go, and it goes. That we lean into what God says, and we actually do what God says. We apply his words in the way of his life to our life. And a life that looks like that is one that, baby, come at me what you will. It stands no matter what. But he says, someone who hears and knows what to do, but you don't do what I've called, your life's going to be left in ruins. Right? And so my kind of thought today is I want us to choose the messiness of obedience. Because I call obedience messy. Because whenever it comes to following after God, rarely is doing what God wants me to do what I want to do. Anybody? Rarely whenever God says go, is it a place that I've already got on my list to go to. Like a lot of times the way that God calls me to live is unpredictable, it's uncomfortable, and it can be messy. But it's a mess that we've got to choose. It's the mess that we lean into, because I realize, he says, that it's a man who dug down and he found something underneath the surface to begin to build things on. He enters into the mess because he realizes something valuable that my life can now be built on. He sees the value in the mess. There's value in obedience. There's treasure in following after what God calls us to do. He found something to put his life on. See, obedience is the dirt work. Anybody ever dug a hole? Anybody ever had to fix like a busted pipe? And it's the dirt work. We got a master of dirt work over here, man. We installed pools for a long time. You understand dirt work, right? It's messy, but it takes the dirt work so that everything else works. If you don't do that and you skimp on that, everything else will fall apart. Obedience is the dirt work of digging down and finding the treasure of something that my life can be built on so that it stands no matter what comes against it, because life's going to hit. And here's the example of this story. Both structures, both houses had the storms come and the winds come and the floods come up. Both were experiencing the junk and the CRAP, because I can't say that because I can't say that, of life. It happens, right? Come on, life can be tough. And both experienced it, but here's the difference. One stood strong, one fell. Only difference is one found something bigger to stand on. Something bigger than me, something stronger than me, more stable than me. It's the dirt work. Obedience is the dirt work to put my life on something stable. Without it, my life just can't stand. Without it, my life doesn't have anything to stand on. So, kind of the first little prodding question I have is, what's your life built on? Now, I would say most of us, with unknowing and not on purpose, most of our lives are probably built on our mess. It's built on the junk that comes at us, because we're only as strong as our worst day. We're only as stable as that person's statement. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. I'm doing really good. They said something to me. Now all I'm thinking about is murder. Right? I mean, like, I'm only as stable as the way that somebody treated me. It's like, what's our life built on? And so often my life, the base of my life, what everything is built on is my past and my hurt and my disappointments and my disagreements. And that's kind of the base that I've lived my life on. And so my life's only stable as really my worst day. On good days, I'm standing, but whenever everything doesn't work out right, maybe my life's built on my accomplishments and how good I am. Well, there's some things that some days ain't going to go your way. So we got to figure out something better to live our life on. See, here's the thing. We've already constituted it. We've said it over and over again. Life is messy, no matter what. No matter how you live and what you do, life is messy. But we get to choose the mess. We get to choose, is my life going to be messy on the front end and digging into something that matters, or is it going to be messy on the back end and having to clean up when it all falls apart? Well, I would say the first mess is a whole lot better because I'm building something. Most of the mess of our life is continually cleaning up because it keeps falling around us because my life hasn't been built on something strong enough to stand against what comes against. Right? We haven't dug down and chose to say, I'm going to build my life on something strong. Build my life. I'm going to choose what's difficult, choose what's not always easy to live out the best life possible. Now, for you and for me, which one feels more like us? The house, it's like I got some shutters kind of flinging off. My roof is kind of collapsing. Like, right? I mean, feels more like my life. Or like, I'm strong and stable. I honestly feel like I'm probably somewhere in the middle, to be honest. Some days I feel great, and some days I feel like, man, I need a new roof. I feel like everything just imploded on me. Can anybody at least be honest? I feel like we all deal with this, but Jesus gives us the solution. The difference in one life and the other is obedience to the words and the ways of Jesus. Now, I understand. Listen, I get this. I'm glad that the train's giving me amens right now because like, preaching a sermon on obedience is not necessarily like a crowd shouter. Like, preach it, brother. Woo, we want to obey. Like, I get it. I get it. It's not a fun one. Go eat some ice cream after service to make up for it. It may not be a crowd shouting conversation, but I'm telling you, to make that choice to say, God, I will do whatever you call me to do, and I will follow your ways, it's a life-changing decision. It's life-changing. Just hearing what Jesus said without any action behind it never does anything. Jesus calls those hypocrites, if you read through this story again. You read that word at least a couple times. See, there's incredible blessing and benefits on the other side of obedience. Like, there's incredible blessing on the other side of obedience, but honestly, most of us never actually get to the part of our Christian walk where we see the blessings lived out because we don't trust God enough to walk it out. Because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's just not easy. And honestly, our level of obedience usually is only if I was going to do that anyways. God, call me to wherever, as long as I was already going to go there. But if you make me a little bit uncomfortable for you, ask me to do something, and you ask me to choose, then God, I'm out. Now, I know it's not you because I'm looking at so many perfect people online. I know that you got your life together. Me, I messed up, and this is totally me. There's so many things I look back on my life, and I can say, God, I didn't do that when you asked me to. I didn't. There's still this one time I remember sitting in junior high. It was in junior high art class. And there was this guy sitting beside me, and the entire semester I knew God was telling me, speak to him, tell him about me, tell him about me, tell him about me. And you know what I did? Nothing. I drew a picture. You know what? My entire life I've thought about that guy. Now, does God have to use me? No. I pray that he used somebody else. But you know what? I had the opportunity for God to use me, and I didn't do it. And how many times over my life, maybe it's not specific things God spoke to me, but things are already written in his word, but it was easier to do something else than do what he says. And I'm telling you, it will hinder and destroy our life. So what's the importance of obedience? I want to talk about that just for a minute. Like, what's the big deal with, like, God says to do this and do it? Like, I mean, can't I just get a free ticket to heaven? Isn't it that? I mean, I just want to pray and go to heaven, you know, and then do what I want in between. Yeah, I mean, there's a better life for you to live. That's one key. But let me look at a few things. Here's the importance of obedience. Here's number one. Obedience recognizes authority. It's one reason that we obey. It recognizes authority. Kevin Lambing right here. Hand up. Yeah. 30 years military, 30 years military. And I'm sure there's probably people that were over him that he didn't like very much, but obedience was because of authority. If somebody higher ranking than him walks up, he wouldn't be like, what's up, bro? And like, no. Like, if they said, hey, go over there and do that, he's like, nah. That wouldn't work out well. Why? Because first and foremost, we obey because of the authority that's there. Like my kids, you just don't get a no. Now, whenever you move out of the house, you get your own house, clean it if you will. But when we say clean your room, if there's a no, that means you're probably about to be in some pain. Anybody with me? Because we can debate the whys later, but first and foremost, well, I'm the boss. I'm in charge. I have authority, and so you submit to that authority. Now, if we're believers, right, we say, Jesus, you're Lord. And he says, why you call me Lord if you won't do what I say? Because if we don't follow after Jesus, here's what it says. I don't recognize or treat you as authority and Lord of my life. It's great, be my Savior, die for my sins, but you're not in charge of me. That's what it says. Jesus is Lord. Here's what I challenge you to do. You take a piece of paper, steal a connection card out of the back, take a pen, write it on your notes. And I want there to be 2 words. You can do this now or later, but 2 words. There's the word no, there's the word Lord. And with every decision that you make in life, one of those has to be circled and one has to be crossed out. Because they can't live together. So as I'm walking through and as I'm responding to how somebody treated me, as I'm living my life, I have to circle one, cancel one out. Because Jesus can't get no and be my Lord. It can't happen. So if I choose to do whatever I want and say, God, this is what I want, I want you to physically take the pen and scratch out Jesus as your Lord. It seems dramatic, but we have to understand that's what's happening when we refuse to walk in what God says. It's a refusal to submit to who he is as our head. Listen, there's another dynamic to this. It's also, if he's authority, we also believe that he knows best, right? Which goes into the second one. Here's another reason why it's so important. Obedience is important. It shows trust. It shows trust. You ever played that game before where like one person is blindfolded and there's like a little maze, an obstacle, and you got to get to a finish line, and the other person is like telling you what to do and how to do it? Let's be honest. Would you trust the person beside you right now to play that game with? Some of you are like, yeah. Some of you are no. I'm looking at you and thinking a resounding no. Because here's what I know about me. I totally would get you to run into something on purpose. Just funny. I'm sorry. But it takes trust. It takes trust to not know where I'm going and have someone else lead me that can see. It takes a knowing as well that I don't know where I'm going. And this is why obedience to Jesus is so important. It takes first a knowing that I don't know where I'm going. I don't know the end result of my life. I don't know the beginning from the end, and it's trusting that, God, you do. And it's trusting that even in seasons when I don't understand, even in seasons when I'd rather do something different, I trust you, so I walk out your ways, and I do what you call me to do simply because I trust that you know the plan, you see the obstacles, and I feel like I'm tripping in life right now, but I'm sure that you're keeping me from something way worse over here, and you're getting me to something better over here. It's trust. It exercises and shows our trust. Here's the thing, like my outfits, like what I wear, right? I ask Christy before I leave the house every time. You may not like it. I don't care. But I'll try. I'm kind of risky sometimes, right? I'll try something new, right? I'm not too scared. But before I leave the house, I walk to Christy and be like, does it work? And if she says no, listen, I've disobeyed that a couple times and it didn't work. And people were like, oh, you tried something today, brother. right, yeah, white pants. These are light gray. I've stepped up. So, but like I go to Christy and I say, I did it this morning. Seriously, she's in there getting her makeup on. I was like, hey, is this okay? Is it okay? She's like, yeah, you look good. I know, thanks. Like, I'm confident at that point, but I'm asking, why? Because I trust that her knowledge of what looks good is a whole lot better than mine. You can't put everything on a hefty mannequin and it looks good. I'm just saying, I gotta make some good choices and I need outside opinion. How about your life? How about your life? Do you trust God enough to know where your life should go? Like, I got it, I'm good. Gosh, how dumb we must look sometimes because we don't know where we're going. Obedience does not require understanding. It's an understanding that he knows. Here's another thing that obedience does. It exercises our faith. Listen, we call it, we're people of faith. Are we though, really? We're people of convenience. People of, got really pretty good coffee, it's free. But are we people of faith? Faith is only required when I don't know what's going to happen and I do this anyways, right? And faith is a muscle, and the more that I flex it, the bigger it gets. And some of us, there's a lot of seasons in my own life, I can look back and say, I haven't grown in my faith in a long time because I'm doing nothing to exercise it. There's no real faith without obedience because it trusts God no matter what. Hebrews 11:6. Ooh, this is a tough one. I don't like this one, but it's true, right? You ever read some scriptures like, I don't like that one. That one hurts, right? Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Is it possible a little bit? No. You don't have faith, God can't be pleased. God, I have to trust you and walk out who you've called me to be. Fourth thing, why is obedience so important? It expresses love. Now, here's our Christian walk. We don't respond and obey to God, yes, Lord, out of some robotic, programmed response. I will go, God. Turn to the right. That's not our Christian walk. God could have made us that way, but he didn't. He gave us this thing called choice. And here's what choice does. Choice reveals our heart. What we choose gets our affection. And he said this, Jesus was saying this right here in John 14:15. If you love me, keep my commandments. If you love me, make me a t-shirt, buy me some gifts. No. He said, if you really love me, keep my commandments. I can walk out what I've told you to do. Walk it out. Do it. You know, the opposite of this is also true. It's also true in disobedience. And here's a little nugget I'm just going to drop on you. I'm going to drop it like it's hot and walk off, right? I want you just to, yeah, some of you are like, I'm so disappointed now, but you're going to remember that. It was worth it. It was worth it. Incomplete obedience is complete disobedience. And I want you to sit with that. God, I'm doing pretty good over here, but I'm not trusting God over here. Well, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Incomplete obedience. If I'm not giving my life fully to God and trusting him, it's complete disobedience. And listen, I know none of us has got it all together. We're all working on it. Jesus said this really confounding thing one time. It says, be perfect as I am perfect. That word perfect is a progressive thing. It's not like wake up tomorrow and just have it all together. No. It's a walking it out. It's a living it out. It's growing in this. But we need to understand God wants it all. There's incredible power in simple obedience. Incredible power in simple obedience. And just, hey, I want us all to practice, okay? Just say, yes, Lord. You just changed your life right there. Yes, Lord. Incredible power in simple obedience and just trusting him. My life so often is built on my latest hurt, my latest mistake, my abilities, my strength, how much I can make, how much I can do, how much you like me, how much you like me. Yet, whenever somebody doesn't like me, my house falls. Yet, whenever I have a bad day, my house falls. Yet, my life's going to be built on something better. It needs to be built on him. That happens through that really fun thing, obedience. Just trusting and walking it out and saying, God, I just trust that you're gonna meet me in my step. Pastor Charles Stanley said this, God is responsible for the consequences of our obedience. we're responsible for the consequences of our disobedience, right? When we disobey God, we're responsible for the after effects. But whenever we obey God, whenever I understand or not, God is responsible for the outcome. I like his outcomes better, right? I like the chances with God better than chances with me. It's like going to a restaurant. You ever played like credit card roulette or debit card roulette? We're not going to go with credit card. In a restaurant, you go and you all buy some food, then you put your debit cards in a hat, and whoever picks out pays for everybody, right? I trust God's debit card a whole lot better than mine. Because if I put my card in the hat and we're all eating, you just got to know I did that in faith. There ain't enough money to cover all of ours. I'm just hoping you're paying. But it's like that's what disobedience does. It lives out a life that I'm in charge of the debt. I'm in charge of the bill. Obedience to God says, I've got it. I've got you. I've got the outcome. Well, God's pockets go a little deeper. His abilities go a little bit deeper. His goodness goes a whole lot deeper. Anybody? God's a whole lot better than we are. See, there's an exchange that happens. There's a holy exchange that begins to happen whenever we give God our lives in obedience, when we trust him. See, the building blocks of my life then go from my control to his control. I exchange his hands. There's an exchange that happens. There's this engineer in Kenya. And what she did is she realized there was a major problem in Kenya, just like there's in most of the world. But in Kenya, trash is just like overrunning the country. So much trash. So she created this contraption that would take the plastic trash and convert it into bricks. I want to check out this little short video. I'm in somebody's way right here, I know, but.
My name is Mzami Mate. I'm the founder of Jijenge Makers Limited, and we convert plastic waste into building products. We have few machines. The extruder does the mixing of plastic waste with sand at very high temperatures, and then the press compresses it. Plastic is fibrous in nature, and so therefore the brick ends up having a stronger compression strength. Does that look like waste?
Isn't that awesome? She takes the trash and they made bricks that are 5 times stronger than traditional bricks. So now they're able to, like what was overrunning their country, they're able to build their country. Like they're building walkways and they're building homes. This is pretty cool. Do you know that's the exact same thing that happens whenever you place your life in God's hands? You take the life out of your control that creates the mess and the junk, you put it into his, that gives you something to build on. Obedience gives God the ability to convert what you thought would destroy you into something that will now sustain you. Whenever you go to God and you trust him anyways, what was your greatest struggle can be your greatest strength. Like the biggest battles of my life now in God's hands becomes a brick to build something better. That's how God works. That's how he rolls. Whenever I give him my life, he always gives me something better. Whenever I choose him, it's this conversion that happens. It's something gets transformed and changed. He creates a structure that's unshakable. James chapter 1, verse 2 and 3. James says this, consider it pure joy. Like, let's be happy about it. My brothers, when you face trials, this is insane. But why? Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, because my worst days in God's hand produces something better than I could ever do on my own. Romans 8:28, for we know in all things that God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. Whenever I'm living my life in his direction and I'm putting myself in his hands, then he takes everything, even the junk, right? And he makes something good out of it. It's this supernatural exchange that begins to happen. Hey, what does that look like lived out? Well, it looks like a cooler. It's not a cooler. It's very deceiving. See, we created this device at home. They had this device that created the mess into bricks. Well, I wanted to create something where we could see spiritually kind of what happens. So we made this. I put in mess, and it pulls something else out. And so what we've called it, it's a work in progress. Just go with me here. It's the godly obedience apparatus of transformation. And so my daughter's working on a logo. The GOAT has nothing to do with the function of it. It's just how it turned out. It's a work in progress. I think she's done a really good job, though, on logo creation, real graphics, if y'all need some designer. But here's what happens. Lived out, what does this look like? What does it look like lived out practically in my life? If life is happening, and normally I would respond one way, in my way, but instead I choose to obey, what could God do with that? Well, see, my life... it's pretty hard sometimes, right? Sometimes there's more month than there is money. Sometimes in my life, there's people that seem like they're out to get me instead of like me. And so my default is to worry. My default is anxiety and to stress over it and to stew on it. And so this is my response. It's worry. It's junk. It's mess. But I've built my life on it so often. But here's what God said. Hey, You give me that, and we kind of shake it up a little bit. This thing's happening. We give it, and God said, instead of worry, give me your worry. He said, I want you to worship. Don't worry about anything, but with prayer and supplication and with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. Instead of suffocating in worry, and I know it's my first response, I know it's how I feel, but instead, it's not about how I feel, it's how I obey. It's about me choosing to follow in the ways of God instead of how I feel. Then God says, oh, wow, look what happened. God said, now you gave me your worry. I can give you something called peace. You chose to worship me. Now I'm giving you something that was going to destroy you, but something now you can build on. Because you got a peace that passes understanding. Because I chose to obey God instead of doing only what I wanted to do. Well, I was mistreated by that person. You don't know what they did to me. They hurt me, and I understand that. My response now is to keep people at a distance, to condemn people, to get bitter, to talk bad about people. That's my junk. And so often that's kind of what I live in. I live in this pile of bitterness and mess. And so this is the base of my life. So no wonder that my life falls apart every time something happens because I'm just angry and I'm mad at people. But God said, hey, instead of just giving into that, I understand what they did. But if you would just give me the junk, and instead you would choose to obey no matter how you feel, instead of you would choose to walk out my word, then right here we go. And you would choose instead to forgive, walk out that obedience. You give that to me, and you say, I'm gonna. Listen, you're not forgiving them because you're excusing what they did. You're forgiving them because I've asked you to, and I'm a good God. And I got a better plan for you than you to stew in your bitterness your whole life. And listen, I don't want you to sit there and condemn and knock down everybody in your whole life because somebody hurts you. Instead, I want you to lift up people and to pray for people so that you can have better. And God in exchange, oh, look at that, was so cool, what happened? And God said, now, because you chose instead of giving into your bitterness and your hurt, now I give you a bedrock of healing and compassion. It's the beginnings of something that your life will not fall whenever life hits. Right? I mean, we can go on and on and on. Whenever my initial response to whatever is this, and God says, hey, instead, choose this, God always gives back better. God always gives back. What so often that my life is built on this junk, never given to God, and yet we're wondering why my life's falling apart. Well, Jesus told us, he said, if you just obey me. Why do you call me Lord if you just won't obey? Because it means you don't trust me? It means you don't believe that I'm in charge? Do you not believe that I'm good? Do you not love me? Do you not believe that I'm loving? It's one of those answers. Like it's one of those things. It has to be, if I don't trust God enough to actually obey and walk it out and to say, God, what you have is better than what I have. If we choose to continually go back to only what I know and what I do, we're picking one of those things out to say, God, either you're not in charge of me, I don't love you, or one of those things. It has to be one of those. For me to say, I'm going to do things my own way. You figure out what needs to go in the box. You figure out what needs, but whenever we give God our mess, and we in response follow that up with simple obedience and just say, yes, Lord. He says, now you've given me something to work with. Now, what was destroying you, man, I am building something in your life and in your marriage that anything can come against it, but there's what was the battles is now bricks. Like, this is now the structure of my life, and I can cut. This is like hurricane, tornado, EF 700. Whatever you want to, it can withstand against the worst that comes against life, because now my life is not built on what I can do in the junk of my life and my abilities. It's built on what God can do. The godly obedience apparatus of transformation. The goat. Yeah. But what about you? Right? I know it's kind of a stupid analogy. I get that, but man, I struggle. I struggle putting those things in here because I would rather just, I love being bitter and angry. I love hating you, right? I mean, that's me, because you hurt me, and then I love my worry, my precious. I just love worrying. We say that we don't, yet we continually choose that. I love my anxiety. No, we don't. We hate it. But we never actually instead say, I choose worship. I choose to go to God. I choose, no matter how I feel, to say, God, you are good. I give it all to you. To see what God will produce inside of us. I enjoy when my life hits looking at other people and only seeing what they have and what I don't have, and just getting mad and getting envious and jealous. But whenever I feel those things, my response starting to rise up, I give God my envy, right? And instead, out of me, he said, I'm making you a generous person. And that generosity is building blocks to build your life and to impact others. I can't impact somebody else's life if I'm continually picking up mine. And God has called us to make a difference, but all I'm always doing is picking up my trash because my house is falling down. But God has said, if you'd let me lead you, I can lead you to make a difference in somebody else's life. Like, there's a strong, stable structure that I want you to live in. Doesn't mean the wind ain't coming. Bro, it's coming. Doesn't mean the floods ain't coming. It's coming. Because life is messy. But it doesn't have to destroy you. Because what used to be mess now is my strength. Placed in God's hand, he works all things together for the good of those. You place in there what needs to be in there. Would you stand up with me? Man, I'm just convinced that your life will change on the other side of simple obedience. That my life will be different when I just say, yes, Lord. How often, if we had to look at our lives and how we respond in life and how we treat God in life, do we, if you had the piece of paper in front of you, do you cross out Lord and you choose no? Because it's hard. You think it's easy to love someone when they hurt you? That's what Jesus says to do. That ain't easy. Poke me in the eye. That's better. But he said, but if you do that, it's not about them. It's about me. And I'm your Lord. I'm your God. I'm your love. And if you'll do that, you don't realize what you're missing out on because you're living in the mess. Would you allow me to turn your mess into a masterpiece through obedience? And just trust me. Just trust me. What does your structure of your life feel like right now? And I'm wondering, and I just want to challenge you in this, is there an area that maybe you haven't given to God? Here's the deal. Obedience is never dependent upon circumstance. It's never dependent upon understanding. It's never dependent about, I understand what, no. It's all dependent about God. You said, I step. You said, I step. You said, I step. And on the other side, God, thank you for the life that you're building inside of me. When I took the time to get dirty, to dig down, to find a foundation and not do it on my own. It's just a moment of response. We're going to go a few minutes over today, and I hope that's okay. I want you in just a moment as we sing a song to say, God, what have I been holding on to? What's the mess I've chosen to live in because I've been missing simple obedience and just trusting and giving it to you? Would you let God reveal it to you? In a moment of worship, in a moment of response, would you say, God, it's yours. You are Lord. I love you. I trust you.